Welcome to Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust, covering car culture and the automotive world with Shane Osborne, Brady Wright, and Steve, the producer, Johan. Let's see what's up this week.
Hey, here is what's happening Tuesday, December 30th. Or is it the 31st?
It's the 30th.
Well, it is today. We're recording this one day earlier than our usual thing so that we don't have to do it on New Year's Eve. But yeah, it's Monday, December 30th, but it's supposed to be Tuesday, December 31st, and you guys will figure this out when you're listening and whatever time it is you happen to listen. It's Brady Wright fumbling his way through the intro. Shane Osborne, Steve, the producer, Johan here. We're joining, in fact, welcoming millions of listeners. This is our 118th episode. It is the last episode of Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust for 2020, 2 days away. You can, by the way, find us on iTunes. You can find us on iHeart Podcasts. By the way, I've been listening on iHeart recently, and I like the signal quality.
Oh, good.
It's generally pretty nice. We're also on Spotify and, of course, Podomatic.com, so make sure you like and follow our Facebook page for all the latest shows. This is the last show for 2019, and as such, we're doing kind of a retrospective of all of our guests and special events over the year. Steve and I got a few each, and we also have some special surprises, so stay with us. Our first segment is always Back to the Blacktop. That's where Steve talks about what's going on in the automotive biz. So, as usual, what you got?
Well, I got some really cool news from just up north of us in BC. Now, this is a segue a little different than the automotive side, but it will tie in, and you'll see soon why. Okay. Canada's Harbour Air and its CEO, Greg McDougall, both entered the aviation history books this month as Greg, in the pilot's seat, became the very first to commercially fly an electric-powered aircraft. In this case, a 1963 de Havilland Beaver seaplane.
Okay.
Now, are you familiar with the seaplanes a little bit?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. So this is a 1960...
In fact, the first plane I ever flew was a seaplane.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Now, you didn't fly it yourself, did you?
I was in the co-pilot's seat, so technically no, but I did do a touch and go on Lake Washington.
Oh, wow.
I was 15.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah. It's terrifying.
Yeah. Did you have headset on at that time too?
Oh yeah. Well, I'm the guy who was right next to me, but it was it was very interesting, very intriguing.
Wow.
So yes, I know about seaplanes.
Okay, well the article points out that Greg was an early adopter of the Tesla car.
Aha.
He was so impressed by the innovation that when he got the car 5 years ago, he began to wonder if he could take the similar electric engine technology and apply it to their planes, stating someone was going to do it someday, so it might as well be us.
Sure.
Harbour Air, it turned out, worked with Magna X for the electric drive system, retrofitted its 63-year-old de Havilland. The combination proved particularly suitable. For one thing, the seaplane is relatively modest in size, handling a maximum of 19 passengers plus crew.
Right.
And they fly only half-hour flights from Vancouver to the various islands surrounding the city.
Sure.
And even if the motor drive system failed, the fact that the craft could land pretty much anywhere along the coast added extra margin for safety.
Yeah.
Second, it's a perfect application, being only 30 minutes with a 30-minute reserve, which is what they require. Short hops to the island. So Greg said he really liked the torque because it's immediate. There's no winding up.
Sure.
And so I think, to be honest, this is going to be really cool. They've got to wait, it says, for 2 to 3 years to get the FCC clearance on this thing.
FAA.
FAA, thank you very much. We're under FCC. Well, we're not yet. So anyway, I think this is really cool. I like the idea of adopting new technology or old technology to and they have a platform, 63-year-old plane, and they probably have a whole fleet of these things that they keep up. And
well, the de Havillands are pretty forgiving aircraft, so they have the frame is really nice. They are, like you say, in an emergency, they're pretty capable of coasting to a landing.
I was going to say, they can glide-worthy, pretty well glide-worthy.
Yeah. So, not a bad plane, and it's small enough that they can fiddle around with it, but large enough that they've got some room to put stuff, because the batteries are going to take up a certain amount of weight and things like that. They probably have to give up, I would say, at least one passenger's worth of weight.
I would think so,
maybe more, but that's not a big deal when you're doing a experimental like that.
Right. And I will I'm going to go over to their website and do a little more research. It'd be interesting to find out what power plant they're actually using for this. And then Speaking of electric, Rivian released the battery-powered pickup. Left a video of the R1T truck performing what it describes as a tank turn, a 180-degree turn like a tank. The EV truck maker's electric powertrain is designed to allow the electric motors on each axle to spin the truck right wheels in the opposite direction of the left wheels.
That's what's called neutral steer, by the way. In a tank, one track runs forward, the other one runs backwards, and it basically just twists on an axis.
Bulldozers use that.
Yeah, they call
Anything
it
with tracks.
They call it neutral steer.
Yep.
And it's pretty impressive. The M60 tank, by the way, for those of you who give a darn about this kind of thing, was capable of doing neutral steer at about 50 miles an hour. It's very impressive. Yards of dirt got kicked up when those things did that. Of course, they weighed 60 tons, so it wasn't going to tip over, but pretty impressive maneuver if you were good at it.
Well, and what's nice about this is it's a true off-road vehicle then. With that capability, you get stuck, you just start applying that, and you start moving it around. Next thing you know, you're out of a bog, you're out of a mud pit pretty quickly because you're allowed to, you're not going back and forth now. So your center of gravity changes, your weight changes. So I think this is really cool. They hope to have it going here fairly soon. Of course, everybody they like to get this stuff out ahead of time, get people talking about it. They first kind of squeak something out in 2018. Here it is, 2019. So maybe 2020 we'll see the real deal. And then I thought it would be interesting. There's kind of a sad note. Notable deaths this past year. Ross Perot, big investor in General Motors.
Oh, yeah.
Largest
and
shareholder.
Former presidential candidate.
Yes. Board member in 1984. GM's multi-layer decision-making baffled Perot, who famously remarked, "This isn't a moonshot. It's just a car." So, guys, can you make this a little easier? Put out new cars a lot sooner. And then in 92, yes, he ran unsuccessfully for president, though he did get 19%, if everybody remembers that. Warning that at the time against free trade with Mexico, quipping, "The giant sucking sound you hear will be American jobs fleeing to Mexico." And I think he got that right.
Some of it anyway.
What's that?
Some of it anyway.
Some of it.
Yeah.
And then Lee Iacocca.
Yep.
Big name. We all know who that guy is. Did a lot for both
Ford and Chrysler. He's the lead singer for Poison, wasn't he? Isn't that the... No, maybe not.
No, that guy's still around.
Yes.
And then Jesse Combs.
And they're on tour.
I can't wait to go.
With Motley Crue and somebody else. I can't remember. There's a 3-band tour.
Don't get me started.
Oh, no.
Yeah. It's amazing they're all alive.
Yeah. We're 98.
Hey,
we're rocking hard. No,
we look 98, but we're 57.
That's right, yeah.
Jeez. And we got every disease you can name. Jesse Combs, racing woman, died going over 555 miles an hour.
Yeah, she did.
And so condolences to their families for this. And then I did come across this. Is that we may have covered this, but I wanted to say congratulations to the automakers and dealerships as 2019 is closing out to be another bang-up year, nearly 17 million in sales overall, continuing a 5-year trend.
That's 17 million units.
Yes.
Yeah, not dollars.
And
way more than that.
Oh, well, yes.
Yeah.
Units, that's quite a bit. I think that's
a ton. That's good.
12.
The industry is healthy.
It is. Now, one other person who died, and I had this person on my plans for 2020, that was futurist Sid Mead. He passed away this morning in Pasadena, California at the age of 86, famous for futuristic renderings seen in movies and concept art. Mead Studio at Art Center. Before joining, he was studied at Art Center before joining Ford Motor Company, and he later worked independently as an automotive design engineer for clients such as U.S. Steel, a move that launched his career on several paths, including work for Hollywood. So, condolence for his family. I wanted to get him on. He was actually someone I was looking forward to bringing on because I kind of like to bring on interesting characters that have that are inspirational. So,
speaking of automotive art and design,
yep.
When we come back, I got a great sort of thing that's making the rounds again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
It started 2 years ago when we first started this show. Thanks for tuning in. Coming up on the Windshield View, our retrospective of 2019 on horsepower, chrome, and rust.
Hi, it's Jeff Conwell with the Monsters in Manson, giving a big shout-out to everyone at Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust.
My mind's out of gear. and my heart's in overdrive. I've everything to fear. I ain't never been more alive.
Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust is back. This is the first half of the Windshield View, and this week we're looking back at some of the best guests and special events that we were privileged to cover in 2019. Steve and I have each picked some kind of favorites to talk about, but let's just agree that all of our guests are equally cool. Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust. What we're here to do is talk about hot rods and rat rods and cool customs and lead sleds and classics and restorations and show cars and barn finds and everything else that comes under the heading of automotive. We're also all about special events and car shows and show and shines and build-off challenges and fundraising stuff for the automotive hobby. Some of our best memories are coming up. I did want to say, though, that just before the break we were talking about automotive art and design.
Yes.
And Steve mentioned that one of the legends had passed. You know what's back? 2 years ago, a little more than 2 years ago, when we first started this show, I brought up a topic that had just shown up on the internet. They were talking about a new version of what was Plymouth. They were going to call it the Dodge Barracuda, and there was a concept piece of art. It was a purple car, and it was, based on the Challenger and the Charger,
right,
obviously, but they were going to call it the Barracuda. This was a big deal, and we made a big deal out of it at the time, like, oh, boy, wouldn't this be cool? Well, that exact same piece of art and the exact same rumor is being flogged about lately. I've seen it 3 times today for 2020. The Dodge Barracuda. It's the same piece of artwork. And everybody's breathless because it's just this cool thing. And let's face it, it would be kind of cool to bring back the Barracuda, sure. And what would you do? Well, of course, there's Dodge. It's going to have to be a Dodge. Or a Chrysler, but there's no Plymouth, so obviously they're going to have to change. But why would they? They got the Challenger and the Charger. What more?
They really, all realize
at this point, it's redundant.
It's redundant, and then they've got the Demon and the Hellcat, which is a rebadged, updated badged Challenger.
Well, it's on steroids, is what it is. But you're right. It's the same car. So would you add a Barracuda to the mix? Why?
Matter of fact, the Barracuda was just a rebadged, repopped Challenger.
It was Plymouth's version of the same thing.
Now,
but the funny part about it is, they did all this stuff, back in the day, and now they're talking about, maybe we should do this again. Muscle cars are back with a vengeance, and that's great. It's good for the industry. It's good for the hot rod, hobby. It's good for all of that because it gives people platforms to use and things to talk about, and I have no problem with it. But this concept art thing, it really starts a bunch of rumors, and as cool as it might be, Holden did this about 5 years ago.
Yep.
And they put a concept car. In fact, it's out there. It's a legendary, concept car. Well, everybody for a while they were talking about like, oh, this is coming. No, it's not.
No.
It's an exercise in artwork. It's the same thing as it's a concept car. It's never going to actually get produced because it can't.
And what's
not
interesting,
for any realistic kind of money.
As you pointed out, it was 2 years ago, and 2 years ago they had the same thing with Rivian. They had a sneak peek to a image of the car doing that tank turn, and here it is 2 years later, and they still haven't got it out there.
Sometimes I think they do this stuff just as a trial balloon to see if anybody's going to jump up and down, because you do a certain amount of R&D and write it off.
Okay, so let's do this. Pontiac Trans Am.
Well, that would be more fun.
I think that would be more fun
than the Camaro Berlinetta.
Yes,
you remember the Berlinetta?
Yeah.
That was a really sad, let's take a Camaro, which is a performance car, and let's make it like a luxury car. No, let's not do that.
Well, or you could go, because Trans Am basically was a Firebird, and the Firebird was their answer to the Camaro. It was a rebadged. It was
the same car.
Same car, just a different nose and taillights.
Yeah.
So it would be interesting if they came out with something like that. I think there might be something worth looking into.
Yeah. Well, let's bring back the Mustang too.
Now, how about the Judge?
Sure,
the
let's
69
do that.
to 72 Judge.
Why not? Let's do the Superbird. We're going to play that game.
We're going to play that game.
Hey, we had a whole bunch of this kind of stuff in 2019. Really, we did have a great time talking to all of the people that that were part of the show. And as I said earlier, Steve and I are going to kind of go back and forth on things that we thought were landmark events. And Steve's got the first one. What's your big memory from this year?
Well, we started up the first of the year, much like we're going to do next week, with a couple of my favorites. First was Donnie Smith. And Donnie Smith, well known in the custom bike industry, been around nearly 30 years doing custom bikes, or longer actually. And he puts on the custom bike and car show back east, and it's a well-attended event.
Sure.
It incorporates both cars and choppers and bikes. It's a premier event if you're back in that neck of the woods, and has been a strong contender in that. And I have always liked talking with Donnie. I've talked with him off and on for years when I started back doing hog radio, and then World of Motorcycling, and then we did this. I thought it'd be great to bring him back on. So it was just nice to have him back on and kind of reminisce, and he's just a good old boy.
That was a great show.
That was a good show. And then the other guy that I kicked off with.
Oh, you're doing two. Fine.
Okay, well, I'll wait.
Well, that's okay.
Well, Jerry Heasley of YouTube channel, Barn Finds.
Oh, right.
Another one in January. And why I mention him now, and then I'm going to let you share, is that it got me to thinking about launching our own video channel. And here we are, 2020 is coming up. It's going to be called Chrome and Rust. That'll be the channel. It'll be launching within 2 weeks or sooner. I'm actually working on artwork right now for it. And more about that as we go along.
That will be cool. Well, one of my favorites, we have so many guests that are sort of a niche kind of a topic. They're a little bit of something. And since we cover all parts of the automotive business, it's kind of fun to do something. Especially, I get surprised when we talk to somebody who's a piece of some part of the industry that I'm not familiar with. And that one covered Roger Anderson and his Chandler cars. It wasn't too long ago that he came and talked with us. And first off, I'm not ashamed to admit I wasn't aware of Chandlers. Now, when he started talking about them, and Loziers and the other cars that kind of fit into that little, piece, I got where he was going, and it sort of bubbled to the back of my head. Because when I was a kid, I went to the Harrah's Auto Collection in Reno, and he had one, but I didn't remember it particularly because it just, there's so many cars over there. But I went back after we had talked to Roger. He came into the show, and he gave us, full access to his website and everything, pictures of the cars. And he owns 18 Chandler cars or pieces of Chandler cars. And I went back and looked, and I have a picture of a Chandler that I took with some little Brownie snapshot camera when I was about 13.
Wow.
And it was fascinating that okay, now I remember that. I mean, I remember the event, but it was just so cool to sit and talk with this guy who clearly loved this particular segment of the automotive world.
Yeah.
And to have him sit here for the entire hour and talk about Chandlers and clearly be a fan was really fascinating. It's one of my favorite shows because I learned a lot, and any day I can say I learned something, that to me is a marvelous day. I wish I thought about it at the time, I would have grabbed some piece of lore from his collection and his stuff and used it as a trivia question. But I guarantee you there will be a Chandler trivia question coming up in 2020.
Oh, that is good. And
What's one of yours?
You're right. That is one of the things I work at, finding people that may not be very well known. I've enjoyed that for 12 years doing podcasting, is finding, yes, the big guys, the big gals, but also finding individuals like this that...
Sure. Big fun.
I completely learned something new.
Oh,
find out and I was like you. It was a friend of mine, Ralph, who introduced me to this man, and I had never heard of the car, and he says, "Oh no, this guy's in a Chandler." Okay, that sounds like a cool deal. Well, he hooked me up, and we got him in here. And you're right, I had a wonderful time. We learned a lot. Another one was Daryl Starbird. Speaking of custom legends, and he's made his rounds. A lot of people know about him, but here's this guy in his 80s still going strong.
Sure.
He's not given up the flame. He continues to inspire people. He's got his museum.
Yeah.
And
him and Gene Winfield. I mean,
and Gene Winfield both.
They're the guys.
They are.
Yeah.
They are. And that's why Donnie Smith is that way in the motorcycle realm.
Sure.
He, Arlen Ness.
Well, Starbird, I mean, his name,
guys.
You don't even have to say Daryl. If you just say Starbird, people recognize that there's a Starbird car kind of look, and it was amazing to have him on the show. We're going to talk more. I guarantee you we got some great surprises coming up, so stick with us. The Windshield View will be right back with our look at 2019 on Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust.
Back with the second half of the Windshield View and some more of our favorites on horsepower, chrome, and rust.
So I got a good one. We spend a reasonable amount of time around the Pacific Northwest with the car clubs and the shows, the events, and stuff like that. We go to as many of them as we can possibly arrange. And one of the clubs that we've spent a reasonable amount of time with is an outfit called the Rat Bastards. And they are all about 1969 or earlier hot rods, rat rods, cool customs. It doesn't have to be a rat rod. It just has to be, a car that you built. Built, not bought is the main thing. And they've been doing things around here for 10, 12 years. They have a specific show that is their kind of showpiece every year in the middle of the summer called the Infestation.
Yeah, I love the name.
Yeah,
I
it's
love
a
the name.
huge show, and they have slow drags, a lot of other events. There's always live music, and it's a big event. Last year, this year, 2019, was kind of the crown and glory. It was the 10th annual Infestation, and it was held out at the XXX Root Beer Drive-In in Issaquah, Washington. I heartily encourage you guys to go on the web and look at their site, because it's a classic old-time car hangout kind of drive-in. But a thing about the Infestation of 2019, it's the last one for a while.
Oh,
Talking with Ron Foreman, who's the president of the club, and Marcia Foreman, who really does all the work.
yes.
They said, you know what? We're not going to have one in 2020 because we need to sort of step back and take stock of the situation, and I think that's great. What they're going to do instead, at least they've said this, and this is kind of a
keep it under your hat kind of thing.
Well, it's not. I mean, I'm saying it on the air, so obviously people are going to know. But it's a sneak preview coming up in probably early May. There is going to be a first ever Hot Rod Show and Shine that is going to be done for the benefit of the Lake Forest Park Shoreline Senior Center. They're actually looking for some fun situations, and I'm producing it. They asked me to do that, and I will. And Ron and the rest of the bastards, which I just can't believe I'm saying that, they have said that they will help and support the show. So we're going to actually bring the slow drags and most of the events from the Infestation to Shoreline next year. Stick with us. We'll tell you more about it as we get a little bit closer. But we'll
have our booth down there, so you can come by and do some trivia.
Yes, we will. I will do trivia. We'll even bring extra buckets of barn finds.
Yes, big hit for this year.
Yeah. So the Infestation is gone for a year, but not forgotten. It'll show up in another incarnation, if you will.
Well, and speaking fun, we did do the Edmunds Car Show, which is another production that you're involved with.
Yeah,
and
so.
That has been running strong for many, many years. We had quite the rain this year. It kind of was
the last
raining,
half hour.
Yeah, raining setting up, and then it stopped. And
as
then
soon as I got on
is,
stage to do the awards.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, I was folding up, and Jake and I were heading back.
Man.
But we caught a bunch of that on video. I don't know what we're going to do with that one, but boy, I think I had 30 to 40 people come up to the booth.
Oh yeah,
and they did the trivia question. We got all those pictures. They got on our Facebook page, and it was just a hoot. People loved that.
And this coming year is the 20th of the Edmunds Classic Car Shows.
Oh, that's going to be great. We'll have to do some kind
car
of a commemorative
and motorcycle show, by the way.
We'll do a commemorative on that.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Another one that I was Vince, the president of Shelby USA.
Oh yes,
I had gone down in March with my wife to celebrate 30 years of blissful marriage, and let's just say great marriage. And
Mary's listening. I think you should stick with blissful.
Yeah, blissful marriage.
Blissful is good.
It gets, to be honest, it's better every day. Anyway, we were down there, and one of the things we took in was a tour of Shelby USA.
Oh yeah,
an hour and a half walk through. I grabbed a couple cards, and through that I got a hold of Vince, and we got him on, and he was just amicable, just a lot of fun.
Lots of fun.
Bring him back on again.
Yeah,
and just a wonderful time having him on, and what a legendary name.
Oh, iconic! You say Shelby, everybody knows.
Shelby, Corvette, you don't have to say anything more.
Yeah.
Worldwide, everybody knows who these guys.
Show.
So
he was a great guest.
He was a great guest.
Well, last year we had a first, and I was extremely proud to be a part of it. The Seafair celebration is Seattle's, water festival every year in the summertime. It's a huge month-long deal, and there's all kinds of things that happen to. There's a parade, and there's the Blue Angels come, and there's hydroplane races, and it's a big deal in the city. Last year, the folks at Seafair got in touch with me and said, what do you think about the idea of doing a classic car show or a hot rod show at the hydro races? Now, the cool thing about this was that, of course, if you go to the races, it's between $60 and $150 per person to get in and be in the pits and see this whole thing. It's a big deal. The car show, $25 to enter your car, and you're there all day, and we couldn't stop people from showing up. It was amazing, and the first year went really, really well. All the people that came said they really enjoyed it. We had trophies. It was a really super deal. And I just heard from Mike McMorrow, who is the producer of All Things Seafair, and he said, you know what? Let's get together within the next couple of weeks. What do you think about doing a 2-day show? Classics on Saturday and hot rods on Sunday, or the reverse. And, I broke one of my fingernails typing back, hell yes! So we're
he might, when he says classics,
well, we're going to talk. I haven't got any
might
details
even
yet.
want to incorporate some of the Porsche and the more European groups around here.
There's never been any prohibition for them. I mean,
No.
they certainly could come.
But
I don't know what the designation is going to
Right.
be. If they go to 30 years or older, then that is typically a classic. Then certainly there were Porsches around and all the other things. We'll see. I mean, that's 1990, so that's not that old.
no,
Which is frightening. Actually, that
Jeez,
1990
don't talk
is
that way.
30 years ago.
I know.
I don't even want to know that.
I don't either.
But yeah, so that's a thing that is going to happen again this year, and dates and details will be forthcoming. But I was really, really pleased that they enjoyed it and that we get to do it again.
Well, one of the events that I enjoyed was Jake, who is my partner in crime, who's a videographer and editor, and I went up to the Hot Wheels Legends of Seattle tour, and we captured some great footage, great interviews, and we ended up making our first drive-by interview show, and it is in the can. And then, so that will be on our Chrome and Rust YouTube channel, which I said is going to be launched in January. And that's one of the episodes, and it's called Drive-By Interviews, just because it's a quick little interview with individuals at events, and it just makes a lot of sense. And then we highlight what's going on. And Jake is, to be honest, is a young fella with a passion for videography, and every show that we're doing gets better and better. And that was our first, and I'm looking for a lot more. We've got another one that we did in Snohomish, which, again, he was even better at what he was doing. And to be honest, it's all good. But it's going to be, I think it's going to be hits. And as part of us putting our own show up there. But anyway.
Now, is the channel, I have to ask you this because you've said it twice now. Is the channel and the show going to be Chrome and Rust or Horsepower Chrome and Rust?
Nope. The channel itself will be Chrome and Rust.
Oh, okay.
And the reason for that is that way everything can go underneath it. I do not want to have 5 different channels. And we're going to do drive-by interviews. Is going to be one of the shows on there.
Oh, so you have several shows on
I
the
have
channel.
several shows that we're going to be rolling out on there. And so
just didn't want to confuse people.
No, Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust will be on there, as well as a number of other things. But that will be rolled out in the new year. I've got my hands very busy.
Big fun.
Chrome and Rust covers everything.
Nice.
So,
well, speaking of covering everything, it would not be an end-of-the-year retrospective if I did not mention Kenny Earls and his KHRA, Keeping Hot Rodding Alive Kids, and the program that he put together in Kingman, Arizona. We've talked to Kenny a couple of times over this last year, and I got to hand it to this guy. Here's a guy who decided that young kids didn't have enough knowledge and access to, learning about cars and stuff in the schools. The shop classes, of course, are long gone. So he started one of these things, a program like this, on his own dime, funded it out of his workshop, and started teaching high school kids how to do this kind of stuff. And he got them so interested. He's been doing it for a year or so. He got them so interested in doing it that this year they all got together, and these are all high school kids now. And basically, they got some sponsorship after having done it for a little while. But they got together and they built a car from scratch, and the kids took it to SEMA. They took it to the SEMA show, and they were recognized for what they did. They got a lot of coverage. If you go to KHRA, or Keeping Hot Rodding Alive, or just look up Kenny Earls on Facebook, you'll see a video that was shot, a professional video that's absolutely great, of that car and the reception that they got when they got to SEMA. You cannot say enough good things about this guy, and they're doing it again. The car right now is sort of doing a little tour, and the kids are really, really jazzed about it, as they should be. This car has dual controls.
Oh, I know.
And it's just the coolest thing. If you haven't seen it, I seriously encourage you, just put the show on pause right now. Go look up KHRA and look at this car, because it's really a hoot. We've got it on our Facebook page as well. But yeah, Kenny was gracious enough to talk with us a couple of times, and we've gone to his website and commented back and forth. It's a wonderful program, and he's done a tremendous job putting that thing together. And he's definitely one of my high points for 2019.
Well, and we like to support anybody who is supporting the youth coming up.
Sure.
And getting into, we had Casey put on, and he's doing similar things. We've had other people on. So, yeah, but Kenny is just
even Chip Foose is in favor of the whole idea.
Yes,
yeah.
And he is somebody that I've got to line out to. I've got to keep hammering him.
We'll have Chip on this year, no doubt.
Yes. A big highlight for me, because it takes me back to my youth, was Bruce Meyer, inventor of the Doom Buggy.
Oh, yes. He was great.
He was great, and he kind of shared a little inner part of him, and kind of the thing that had to deal with just the whole issue of how he lost his company and how whole went. I had no clue, and I think if you don't know anything about why the Doom Buggy came and went like it did, you need to hear that show. You need to go back.
We're specifically talking about the Myers-Manx.
The Myers-Manx.
If you say anything Dune Buggy, you cannot escape Myers-Manx.
No, he was the inventor.
Yeah, it was the Dune Buggy for a decade or more. And I was fascinated by the fact that there were so many different models of that thing that I didn't recognize. I didn't realize that there were that many different models of it.
Yeah, because you think of the one, and then people like my father, who came along a little later, just saw one in a magazine and bought a kit, and it was by a copy company.
Right.
But I think that was probably after he had gone out of business, because
could be, yeah.
he had lost the patent on that stuff.
Yeah.
And then everything went haywire for him. And so my dad bought a kit, and I remember that was like one of the first real bonding times my dad and I, well, we had a lot of those, but he and I was out in the shop, 10 years old, and working on helping him put together the fiberglass and pouring it and all that on the fiberglass body and all that as he was doing the wiring.
You were refilling the blinker fluid and looking for the left-handed wrenches.
Oh, man. It was just a great time. And I remember he couldn't drive it in the winter because it was parked. It was air-cooled, and it got pretty cold up in Ferndale. And it was just too cold to drive around.
Plus, it didn't have any windows, right?
He bought the canopy.
Oh, he had the top.
He had the zip top plastic canopy, and then the windshield.
Most of them didn't.
Well, he went the extra mile and did that.
Nice.
And let's just put it this way: I took it out with my buddies and came back, and my dad said, "I got to get rid of it."
You're 13. Why are you driving?
No, I was 16, and my dad saw the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
Biggest pain I ever gave my dad, I think. So.
But still, when you're the instigator of an entire industry,
that's what I'm saying.
I mean, he was a tremendous interview. I would love to have.
That would have been Shane's highlight this last year, because he thoroughly loves Doom
Yeah,
buggies.
no doubt. He had a lot of fun at that show.
Even has one.
Well, speaking of building and stuff that gets built, I was really, really jazzed to be a part of. In fact, we need to call him again. Kevin Martin and the rest of the guys from the RSC outfit got themselves involved in a rat rod build-off. It's a $4,000 build-off. $4,000, build a car for $4,000 or under. It's got to drive 1,000 miles, and they really $100 buy-in, and they're still in the midst of doing this. The run is coming up in summertime, and it is going to be spectacular. And, Kevin and his buddies just kind of started this thing, actually, at one of the Rat Rod and Manson shows last year. They were all sitting there. I was watching them do it. They sat around and said, well, I can do this. You could do. What if we did, and this could be fun, over a couple of beers, and bang, here's this thing. I think he said last time we talked to Kevin, They have about 44 cars.
Yes.
Now, and
Oh,
I'm sure there's
amazing.
more at this point. I think it's sometime in January we should call Kevin again and get an update, because you can go to the website and see it. It's the RSC and group doing this Rat Rod build-off. It is phenomenal.
Brady, have
And
you
big
got
fun.
less than 4,000 into years, or are you already over that?
No, I'm still under 5.
But
I'm
you said 4.
Yeah. Oh, I'm under 5. I don't know. I'd have to actually add it up, but by the time I'm done, I'll probably be over 5.
That's not bad.
Yeah, well, but I'm not looking to get in that build. But
No,
it'd be fun.
and you're new at this. These guys have been
Oh,
doing
yeah.
this for years, so they can source things and make it work for them. Whereas you're learning, and but thanks to Shane and some of your friends with Rat Bastards, you've been able to save a lot of money.
No,
and
I
you've
gotta
learned a lot.
hand it to those guys there. I'm getting lots and lots of help and learning as I go, and that's all you can ask for.
Well, you're listening to the greatest automotive information show in the known world, and a cool hot rod story you can tell your friends and grandchildren about is coming up next on Horsepower, Chrome, and Rust.
Lots of rust.
Gonna blow the scene, cause trouble makes rubble like you never seen. My motor is clean, spits gasoline.
Well, it's time for Cars Confidential here on our 2019 wrap-up show. We're back. This is a story. This week, we're actually doing a story from Fenders, Fins, and Friends, Lance Lambert's book. Lance has been kind enough to let me read stories out of here because I never asked him if I could. I just did it.
Hey, any
however-
plug for his book he loves?
Lance will not mind. And speaking of that, I'm having a little gathering on New Year's Day, and Lance and Jan are going to come. So at that point, I will tell him that I'm doing it and ask him if he cares if I do it some more, and he will not care.
No.
He might, but he probably won't. I'll wait until he's had a couple of beers, and then I'll ask him.
Well, he sat in when you weren't able to make it after your surgery.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
He's a good guy.
And he proceeded to slime me on Facebook.
Oh,
about
he
it,
said
too.
he was going to take your position.
Yes. It was. Yeah.
Oh.
So this one is called Rebecca's Run, and it's actually kind of short, but it's a funny story. One sunny Saturday afternoon, my friends Sandy, Bob, Daryl, and I decided to attempt to convince several young ladies that we were the popular vocal group known as Jay and the Americans. This would be a blatant lie. Jay and the Americans recorded 21 singles and 19 albums from 1962 to 1971, and 10 of their singles placed in the top 10 of the Billboard charts, and their biggest hit, Come a Little Bit Closer, released in 1964, made it to number 3 on Billboard's national charts. I feel like Casey Kasem.
I never heard of him.
They were one of the most successful groups of that era.
So successful that I never heard of him.
You never heard of Jay and the Americans? Well, yeah, but you're 12.
In
How old were you-
65,
how
I was
old were
born
you
in 59.
How old were you in 62? See? 62 through 71?
12.
Yeah. You were born in 59?
59.
So in 62 you were 3.
I was 3.
You
Excuse
didn't.
me.
You didn't
Yes,
have.
that's
No,
right.
of course you didn't heard.
I hang out with a lot of older guys, don't I?
Apparently so. I was married to my third wife in 62. No, this year. So the year was 1964. And the place was Tacoma University Puget Sound Field House, and the fans and the groupies were excitedly waiting for the arrival of Jay and the Americans, who were scheduled to play a concert that evening. Now, the adoring fans were crowded around the huge back door of the field house, hoping that they might get a peek at their favorite Americans, and since, perhaps even get an autograph, Sandy, Bob, Daryl, and I decided that we would try to pass ourselves off as the group. The fact that we looked nothing like them and were significantly younger didn't matter to us. We had two things going for us that might help convince the ladies that we were the real group: a flashy 1963 Thunderbird convertible, and Sandy, the T-Bird, which was borrowed from my stepfather, was good because it seemed like the type of car that one of, or the other, maybe the entire group, might arrive in. Sandy was good because, like the Americans, like the members of the group, his hair was just a little bit long, and Jay and the Americans were not part of the rising tide of Beatles look-alike groups. Instead, had much more kind of a New York City doo-wop group look. Sandy's slightly long hair looked perfect, so we devised a plan. To utilize our two advantages, we left the top up on the T-Bird, put Sandy in the back seat, and slowly drove across the Fieldhouse parking lot towards the gaggle of groupies. I approached within 50 feet of the girls and gave the impression that we wanted to park and go into the building. We slowed down, looked at the fans, and then acted like we were afraid they would mob us. Then Sandy leaned forward and looked out the window. Our plan worked perfectly. The girls started running to the car and yelling out, "Jay, Jay!" I sped up, and the T-Bird made a big circle around the parking lot in preparation for repeating our celebrity impression. The closer we approached, the more excited the girls became. As we neared them for the second time, they again charged the car and began tapping on the windows and yelling for us to stop. I suddenly felt like I had just arrived at Shea Stadium and was about to have my clothes ripped off by crazed fans. Even worse was the possibility that the T-Bird was about to have its convertible top ripped off. It was time to end the ruse and vacate the premises. At that moment, I realized that the person yelling at my window was my high school classmate, Rebecca. At the same moment, she recognized me and figured out that the Thunderbird didn't contain Jay or any of the Americans. She suddenly looked very angry and stopped running alongside the car. Why were Rebecca and the others so easily fooled? Well, up close, we didn't look anything like Jay and the Americans. Were these girls nuts? Were we nuts for spending a summer afternoon pretending to be members of a group of which we were not even fans? The answer is likely yes to both questions. On the positive side, our deception taught us how it felt to be mobbed by adoring fans, even if they weren't ours, and we had a taste of what it was like to be rock stars. But I have to admit that I will never forget the look of disappointment and frustration and anger on Rebecca's face. Perhaps I'll apologize to her at our next high school reunion. Or not, Lance, or not. Generally speaking, I think if you manage to get away with something that heinous,
Yes.
you should just leave it alone.
Yes.
Not revisit it if you could possibly. Maybe by the time this next high school reunion occurs for Lance, it'll be his 78th high school reunion, and nobody will remember
I think so.
that he did that. Because, he is old. I mean, let's face it.
Yes.
Lance is old.
Well, what's interesting is who would ever thought about doing something like that? It's like a vignette from a movie, and it's like, but that would be Lance and his friends.
Clearly, having a little bit of larceny in your heart was one of the criteria
I think
that
so.
set him up for.
Actually, many of his stories have this devious sideness to it.
Yes, they do.
They definitely do.
And you can read many of those stories, friends, in Fenders, Fins, and Friends.
That's
Confessions of a Car Guy by Lance Lambert, host, and it's important that I say this, host of television's Vintage Vehicle Show. And of course, you can get him on his now on repeats, because it's not. He doesn't let that die though.
No,
he's constantly republishing and reposting episodes of the show because they were all good. Let's face it.
Well, yeah.
Lance is a great guy. He was the most recent and now not president of the Steeds Car Club in Tacoma and the Pacific Northwest, of which I am a proud member, and he's a good friend, and he's nice enough to come and sit in when I have a sudden injury.
Yes, and he is a faithful individual for that. I've known him for we had been doing the Hog Radio Show for a couple, 2 or 3 years, and I went out to it and I met him, and he and I struck it up, and next thing you know, I started to invite him on, and it's interesting how all these kind of connections all start conspiring together, and
well, even though you've known him all that time, we're not going to hold that against you.
Oh, I
still
appreciate
a nice
that.
guy.
I do. I appreciate that.
In spite of the fact that you know Lance Lambert, you're still a nice guy.
Well, I know you.
That's right.
What can I say, Brady?
And when all of us are at the New Year's open house in a day or so.
I knew you when you had hair.
Yes. Well, I still have hair. It's just on the inside.
I just heard something on NPR this morning, and it was talking about a guy that invented a Band-Aid that's electric. It's got a electric thing, and it stimulates healing. So it stimulates the flesh around there and gets things moving, and it heals.
An electric Band-Aid.
Well, yes, and now they've got a cap that they are working on.
A cap?
A cap that they have used on rats and other animals, and they stimulate the hair follicles, and it starts making hair return.
I see.
But now they have to get permission to start using human guinea pigs. And I thought, I hope it doesn't fry somebody's brain in the midst of
Well, who was
like a big hair dryer that the women used.
Who was the guy in Home Alone?
Macaulay Culkin.
No, the short guy, the guy that was the guy that broke in that they set his hat on fire.
He was just in a movie, wasn't he?
You know who I mean?
Yes, he was just in a movie called
I'm stuck on Danny
Irishman.
DeVito, but it's not him.
No, he was
Joe
in Irishman.
Piscopo. Joe Pesci.
Pesci.
Joe Pesci. That's
Yeah,
it.
Pesci,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you get the whole Joe Pesci burned my hat off look.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a long way to go for a
I'm
stupid
just-
visual.
I'm just afraid that might happen. So, yes, they need to do a little testing. So
Yeah, I guess so.
But anyway, hey, I thought we would. I did come across this. I was just trying to think of anybody else that we might have. I did say Harold Cleworth that.
Yeah.
He was that nice Brit that we had on, and he is a painter. He lives in Venice Beach, California.
Oh, that's right. He did the art. I bought his book, by the way.
Yeah,
It's a
and
great. There are some amazing pieces of artwork in there. Just phenomenal stuff. They look like pictures. It's
They
that
really
good.
do.
Yeah.
And he's continually moving. He's not staying with any
Art
one.
of Motion, I think is the title. I can't remember now.
And what's nice is that he continues to evolve in his painting. And I love finding people like that.
Super stuff. Hey, the weekly trivia question is next, and we also have a peek at next week's show. Put it in park. Stick around. We will be back.
Help us if you can. You're an El Camino man. Only you can understand.
Well, welcome back to Around the Wheel. This is where we talk about upcoming events and the weekly trivia question. This is, of course, the final show for 2019, our retrospective show. So it would be only right for me to talk about some stuff that has gone on before, except the trivia questions continue to get answered. So going back to the old ones, it seems sort of counterproductive. So what I did instead was I went back to probably the oldest trivia question. Well, a question about the oldest thing that I could come up with. However, last week's trivia question was the Indianapolis racetrack, which is known as the Brickyard, of course, was the actual first racetrack in America, the first professional racetrack in America. And originally, it was brick, but actually, it wasn't originally brick. Now, the question was, how many bricks? And that's an easy answer. There's 3.2 million plus or minus a buck bricks on the surface when they first did it, but it wasn't originally a brickyard.
Was it wood?
No. The original surface of the track, when it first opened, this was 1909, was made from a kind of a sticky amalgam of gravel and limestone and tar and about 220,000 gallons of what they used to call asphaltum oil. And what happened was they were looking to make an asphalt surface because it would be smooth, right? Well, what happened was it turns out to be dangerously fatal because at the very first race, 5 people died as a result of the chaos because the surface turned out to be really rough but slippery at the same time. And flying gravel and bits of tar from the cars, shattered goggles, bloodied cheeks, the people behind the first couple of guys in line, and they had to stop the race because it was killing people.
Wow.
And it's not funny. So Carl Fisher, who was the track owner, immediately shut the thing down and decided, nope, I'm repaving it. So he used bricks, and each one of the paving bricks weighs 9.5 pounds, a little more than 9.5 pounds. And they were laid on top of the original surface, so that crushed amalgam of crud is down there still. Well, of course, they don't use the brickyard anymore, but all that stuff is down there. They upgraded. It took them, guess how long it took them to lay almost 3.5 million paving bricks?
6 months?
63 days. 63 days.
Wow.
I mean, they blew that stuff down. And, of course, it became famous. It was the Brickyard. It is what it is. Nobody came up with all of this because it's too much.
Minutia.
But if you want to go and get it, it's on history.com. And if you go to history.com and then look up the Brickyard, it gives you all of this. It's fascinating, just fascinating.
Wow.
So here's your first question for 2020. Next week we'll have an answer for this. I guarantee it. And this it's a little bit deceptive. But here's the question. The question is, very few things in traffic are faster than a car. I mean, cars they're the thing in traffic. But in Tokyo, there's something faster than a car for most trips of less than about 50 minutes. And it's not what you think. So if you think you know, go to horsepowerchromeandrust.com. Go to our Facebook page. You can send us an email at contact@horsepowerchromeandrust.com. You can go to the Facebook page and put us, an answer there. You can go to Messenger and hit me up there. It's just fine. But in Tokyo, what's faster than the car for most trips of less than 50 minutes? I mean, obviously, if you're going to
That's a trick question.
Well, it isn't really, but it's very specific, and you will find out the answer, and you can be our first trivia contest winner for 2020. So there. Hey, and speaking of 2020, 2020 is likely to be the beginning of the end for an industry trade magazine that has been a big deal for the last 60 issues, so almost 5 years. Rat Rod Magazine has been a big, big deal, and it's been the chronicler of that particular segment of the automotive customizing industry, or the building industry, you want to call it, and they're done. They're absolutely done. Hey, we still have a few openings for new sponsors. Thank you for joining us for our second year. It's been a magnificent event. Thanks for liking and following our Facebook page and our website. For Shane Osborne and Steve Johan, I'm still Brady Wright, still saying keep your eyes on the road, your hands on the wheel, and your foot to the floor, and still saying next week we're going to do this again. Welcome to 2020 at Horsepower Chrome and Rust.